Good evening and welcome to my channel. My name is David Okon. I'm talking about the cost of living. This is the second video. Please watch the first one. Share the video if you have time. Watch everything. I have so many videos now, over 100 videos, over 150 or more. Watch everything if you have the time. If you don't, just watch as much as you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Share and also advocate for it. If you have something good or bad, leave a comment below. Need the feedback. I've been talking about capitalism. It's the cause of living. Because I believe if you know what is causing the problem, then you can solve. You diagnose a problem, you identify a problem, and then solve it. You cannot solve any problem if you don't know how it is caused. You have to identify the problem, it's cause of living. How is it caused? What is causing it? And then it helps you in devising how to solve the problem. The government is giving help. Get it in the UK or across where you are. Go onto the government website, visit a charitable website, visit private companies like energy companies in the UK, in Europe, in America, in the developed world, in the Middle East, in Africa. Maybe it's different in Africa. I will say this over and over and over. I'm going to be saying it over and over. And please take what you can from this and talk about capitalism, talk about development, talk about progress, talk about human capacity to succeed, resilience. Doesn't matter what problem. Okay, I say this in what I refer. We need to really focus on development, on maximizing our income by working as hard. If you have a job, work as hard as you can, and also create employment. Be self-employed if you're able. I mean, if you have a skill, have a think how to use your skill and to the best of your ability, and work with other people if you can, and work alone if you need to work alone, and seek help from wherever. If you can get grants from the government, if you need something like in the UK, health and social care is a growth area. And I talk to people who are care workers, care assistants, who have the skills. Explore, register a small business if you have to, and look for grants. There are grants available on the government website, and this is actually an opportunity. The cost of living could be an opportunity you can explore, and it's not nothing in life is easy. And if we thought we could just sit and do nothing and get free money from the government, free help. When I say free help, you mean I could be talking about free school meals for your children. Some children can barely eat food now. In children in the UK are going hungry because the government is changing policy. It's affecting because running the government is so complex, and the government needs to be really careful what it does. Those who are in government, individuals who are active in government, it's so hard to communicate with them. They probably set policies. They don't even know how this policy is going to affect ordinary people because children are going hungry without food. Families cannot feed their children in the UK because they have learned to depend on government, and the government is holding back help. The government is sending people to the food bank. It's not even easy to get food voucher. It's not easy. You need an organization to refer you. It's not easy. It's not easy to get benefit. It's not easy to get. If you want to go to university now to study, it's not easy. It's almost impossible to get student finance. But you have to try your best to get whatever help. Student finance now, it used to be grant. Grant means you don't pay it back. You may not believe that. People do not know the British people, actually the people I speak to. I have to explain to them. When I say, okay, you can get a grant, they say, no, I don't want to pay. I mean, I can't pay it back. I say no. The grant, you don't pay back grant if you get grant from the government to start your business, or maybe small business. If you get grant to go to uni, you know, as long as you can get it, get it. You don't pay it back. Anything grant for to buy furniture, maybe buy carpet, maybe buy a fridge. Um, it's called white goods. It's help. These help are there within the local authorities or other charities within the local government. They're there, but you may not be aware of. Find out. Go to your local government's website and look for this help. They're there. And if you need to buy a fridge, if you don't have money to buy a fridge, if you don't have money to buy, say, a cooker, I don't know, I think washing machine as well, and furniture like chair, bed, the money is there, but it's so difficult to get it. Sometimes you are required to get debt advice from professionals in order to qualify for these grants. These grants you don't pay back. There are also loans which are actually interest free. They're not easy to get. They're there. But because of the changes the government is making in policy, it's also making it harder. Its attitude is not to really give money to people now. That's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm talking about capitalism, so that you get a deeper idea. Be an expert on capitalism, because it's going to decide how you live your life. And teach your children, if you have children, if you have friends and family, be their teacher. But before you a teacher, be a student. I mean, you have to really. I mean, government is sending people to go and stay in the library. If you get access to the library to stay there, be my guest. Go there and stay and save money on fuel, on gas and electricity. I mean, go there. If I mean, just read. I mean, if you're in the library, just register and read. You can also access computer from there. You have to register for a computer. Probably you may have to pay some money to print certain things or to access it. I don't know. Let's find out. If you're in the library, yes, there's also a coffee bar there. You have money. You can drink your coffee from there. But I don't understand how the government can send people to the library, because they can't cook in the library. I don't know how they are. You just cook your food and go maybe and sleep there. I don't know how it works. When people say go to the library to save money on food, I don't know, on energy, I don't know how it actually works, because I know that is what the government is saying, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. Also things like town halls. I don't know if there are kitchen there. There are definitely toilets, and I don't know if there are beds there. You can sleep there. Because I mean, what are you going to do if you go to town halls? Because you are running away from your home because your home is so cold. I mean, that's what the government is saying. That is actually on the list of help the government is giving. It's so difficult for me to understand. In Britain is the sixth richest economy in the world, and we are coming to this now. What are we going to do next? Because if you can't afford to pay rent, you're going to be evicted. So the government probably have to open a concentration camp. People have to be moved. If you can't afford rent, even if you're in a public housing are supposed to be cheap. But there's something called, because rent is fixed. There's the highest rent you can pay on public housing. But there's something also the government has introduced. I don't know how they did it, but there's something called service charge. Service charge is being increased every year. So although rent, there was a maximum you can pay because of service charge, which means rent, because service charge is part of the rent. They have separated it from rent. And which means public housing costs is going up. Which means because of service charge, because there's no limit to it. I don't think there's limit to service charge. Going forward, and if you're on benefit, in some situation, benefit, because there's something called benefit cap. it doesn't cover service charge in certain circumstances. So that's not good. So and something else, which is actually, you see, if you ask me, the government in the UK, British people, if you work for a living, you shouldn't pay for food, and you should be given money even if you work. Public money, free money, specifically to buy food. Because you see, everybody who works for a living should get free food. They should choose. You work for a living in this country. I don't know how to put it. If at least if you work, if you get maybe £100,000 and up, maybe. But still, if you have to work for a living, everybody should have free access to food. There should be a supermarket designated for working people in the UK, across the globe. And I still say in Africa, even if you are not an African, try to actually help. Try to help Africans because they still have land. Set up an NGO. Maybe you are British, you are English, you're white, or you're black, or you're from the Caribbean, or you're Scottish, Irish. Set up an English NGO and negotiate with Uganda government, Kenyan government, Nigerian government, Ghanaian government, any of the African government. I don't know actually the details. I don't know if they will accept. Let them give you land. It's an NGO to grow food for Africans and open a store, cold storage. Let Africans. It's a charity. You can actually raise money online. I mean, if you can ask one person to give £2 here in the UK, one person to give £2 per month. If you get 50,000 people, that is £100,000 per month, £1 million a year. You go to a country like Uganda, with your NGO, you can register it. Maybe the government, whichever government, you can actually look for funding from any government, UK, European government, African government can give you money. If you can get that, and you can get land, maybe 100 acres of land from a clan. If such a clan gives you 100 acres of land, or even 50, 100 acres would be good. You can grow food, wheat, rice. You can actually rear cattle and supply free food to that clan in Africa because they give you land. You set them as a priority, whoever gives you land. But I would recommend this aspect to Africans who are in the diaspora. You have access to dollar, euro, especially if you're working, but also you can use the internet to raise money, £2 per month by direct debit into a proper NGO. You can get 100 people, 100,000 people to raise £2. That is 200.2 million per month, £2 million per annum. In 5 years, you will have probably, something like 10 million, 20 million in 2 years. Then you can start farming. If you speak to an African government, I'm not saying, if your country, if you're born in Africa, in a country, you are allowed actually to buy land freehold. But if you are not a national, you are allowed to buy land on lease. So if you are an NGO, you can go and buy land in Africa. That's a land policy in Africa. Then your aim, if you negotiate with such a country's government, is to provide free food for the country, for the area. Because if you go to an area and they give you land, sometimes they can give you land for free as a clan. If you buy a land in an area, they give you to buy land. You start by supplying free product, free food, milk, cheese, bread. Put a mill there to grind wheat, to grind rice, and to make bread. You put a factory to make bread. supply food to Africans for free. That's what the government, African government, should be doing that now. But African government gets its money from the IMF and the World Bank. I don't know. Leave a comment below if you know what IMF and the World Bank tells African government how to spend their money. And also, because also a country like Britain and the Western world, I mean, if you borrow money from the IMF and the World Bank and the IMF is probably instructing a country like Britain to set it at its priority to invest in capital and infrastructure other than service. Service is actually what we, the poor, need the government to invest in. But capital investment and infrastructural investment is a capitalistic investment, which actually that money goes to the super rich, the few, and not the many. It goes to create wealth for the few. That's what is called capital. That's what is called capitalism. It's accumulation of wealth. It's a market system, economic system, which is actually there to benefit the rich and not the poor. I mean, it sounds really bad speaking about it this way. And we have been looking at material here from the videos. So I'm looking at free what free market capitalism is, which I'm really going through it with you. I'll see how it goes, and I'll be going through these materials, and and so you know, and basically when we talk about capitalism, is something called laissez-faire, which means freedom or whatever they mean. Laissez-faire means freedom, free market system. Capitalist free market economy is an economic system where prices for goods and services are set entirely by the process of supply and demand and are expected by its adherents to reach this point of equilibrium without intervention by the government policy. So it's free. Its free market is free of government policy. It operates in its own framework, in its system, and the assumption is that things will be normal in the market. There will be no war. There will be no intervention or conflict or any crisis. It typically entails support for highly competitive markets and private ownership of the means of production. So the means of production, like land, capital, whatever. Laissez-faire capitalism is a more extensive form of this free market economy, but one in which the role of the state is limited to protecting property rights. So property rights is like a private right, a private individual right to ownership. There's an investor, somebody who invests in the capitalistic project, in business, as the right. It's a private person. The state has no right over it. So individual right in owning wealth in a country. That's what individual rights talk about. In anarcho-capitalistic theory, property rights are protected by private firms and market-generated law. Now, when we talk anarcho-capitalism, I don't know, it's anarchy, which is actually like I don't know what it means, but anarchy, when we talk about anarcho-capitalistic theories, it's probably relating to a state where the law is still a cake. Probably operating, society is always operating in law, a state of lawlessness. That's what anarchy is, when the law doesn't really function very well. But I think capitalistic practices and beliefs and also principles probably help to develop modern investment in market and business, commercial, legal infrastructure, legal economy. So, according to capitalists, this entails property rights without statutory law through market-generated tort, contract, and property law and self-sustaining private industry. That's as I said. So you have law of tort. These are actually civil legal infrastructure, they are commercial, they are business law. So these are actually targeting private industrialization under the capitalistic economic system. Fernand Braudel argued that free market exchange and capitalism are to some degree exposed. Free market exchange involves transparent public transactions and a large number of equal competitors, while capitalism involves a small number of participants using their capital to control the market via private transactions, control of information, and limitation of competition. So you talk about big businesses monopolistic in their character. When they are big, they control the market, they have so much power. So the balance of power is in their favor, they are monopolistic, they are actually don't they decide actually. They don't really relate to competition like we would have loved, which is actually laissez-faire. The idea of laissez-faire means freedom under the private sectoral system. There is presumed to be an atmosphere of freedom. We talked about mercantilism. Now, when I talk about mercantile, talk about the act of merchandising, which is goods and services, products. And those who produce it are called, who actually trade in it are called merchants. We can also look at, say, something like protectionism. Protectionism without any caveat means you protect your business interests. Actually, anti-competitive practices. You don't want competition. Anybody to interfere with your sphere of influence in terms of commerce. So, the subscription room at Lloyd's of London in the early 19th century. So, Lloyd's of London is a familiar name. Mercantilism is a nationalist form of early capitalism that came into existence approximately in the late 16th century. It is characterized by the intertwining of national business interests with state interests and imperialism. Now, these were actually small merchants. They had personal relationship with those in government, the state like rulers, kings, queens. They had personal relationship and business relationship as well. So, that's how the interaction between the merchant, the market, and the state developed, because they had mutual relationship. There is potentially conflict of interest as well, but which may or may not have been stated at that time. But now probably there would be a sensitivity if elected politicians are also invested in certain private businesses. And believe me or not, we had incidences with the current Conservative Party when they actually gave certain contract to certain groups and individuals. There probably was some sense of political connection. Maybe they were actually conservative party supporters. There's that problem. So it is characterized by the intertwining of national business interests with state interests and imperialism. Consequently, the state apparatus is used to advance national business interests abroad. An example of this is the colonialists living in America who were only allowed to trade with and purchase goods from their respective mother countries. Example: Britain, France, and Portugal. So if you are in America and you came from Britain, you are a European, went and colonized America and expelled the Native Americans, murdered some of them, and took the country by force. Most of them are Europeans. So they were buyers in trade. If they are, for example, from Britain, France, and Portugal, Europeans who colonized America, who still are actually modern day Americans, are Europeans by extension, historical extension, trading partnership, because you trade, you're biased toward the country where you came from. So mercantilism was driven by the belief that the wealth of the nation is increased through positive balance of trade with other nations. It correspondent it corres- corresponds to the phase of capitalist development, sometimes called the primitive accumulation of capital. I don't know what is primitive about it, because it's something primitive means in the model, and also the sense is actually in the past. And so now we are probably now gearing to look at capitalism as an incident of modern economic infrastructure. This model is prominent in Western and Northern European countries as well as Japan, albeit in slightly different configuration. The vast majority of enterprises are privately owned in this economic model. So we're talking about the development of modern capitalism as they occur across the globe, and transnationalism, as now we see Rhine capitalism is the contemporary model of capitalism and adaptation of the social market model that exists in continental European, Western European of today. So we are tracing the origin of capitalism. Didn't occur yesterday. There is historical, perhaps also something we might call historicity, because it's broad and big. Not a small movement. It was progressive. It didn't occur overnight. Looking at the state, and you talk about the lost the material. Just looking for the material. Talk about the state. Let's talk about the state capitalism. We talk about this in brief in the other videos. Watch the other videos. The state capitalism is a capitalist market economy dominated by state-owned enterprises, where the state enterprises are organized as commercial profit-seeking businesses. The designation has been used broadly through the 20th century. The 20th century to designate a number of different economic forms ranging from state ownership in the market economies to the command economies of the former Eastern Bloc. So when you talk about the Eastern Bloc, you talk about the state. Eastern Bloc is opposite of Western Bloc. Today we know them as the East. Not so much as the East, as we know more of the West as being the Western world, the West as in Britain, Europe, America. Normally, when we talk about the East, we talk about socialist and communist countries like Russia, like China, North Korea, the socialist state. They actually believe in central control of capitalism, talk of state capitalism. So in principle, in history, capitalism was the mode of operating economy. In the past, perhaps also in the contemporary, and more than to say maybe, because at the moment, as I speak, capitalism is the thing to look for economically in a systemic economy. And so when we talk of state capitalism is a capitalist market economy dominated by state-owned enterprises, where the state enterprises are organized as commercial profit-seeking businesses. Probably I'm trying to talk about China, which is actually practicing the market economy, but that would not be correct, because China is now a market type capitalist. these are actually, to help us to look at what really took place in the past. And we're talking about the former Eastern Bloc. Now we talk about the former Eastern Bloc. Because now we know the Eastern Bloc, which is actually Russia, China, North Korea, these are vestiges of power. Because in modern terms, we are global. These individual states, which used to be in the East or in the West, are now capitalistic under the global auspices of economic system, also known as globalization. As we have discussed before, previously, severally, within this program of videoing, and according to Aldo Masakayo, a professor at Harvard Business School. Leave a comment below if you know anything about Harvard Business School. State capitalism is a system in which governments, whether democratic or autocratic, exercise a wide range of influence on the economy, either through direct ownership or various subsidies. We talk about democracy. We talk about the opposite of democracy. Perhaps we talk about autocracy, which is a form of, if you like, dictatorship. We found that China cannot be described ordinarily as a democratic government, state system of government. But we also see in China and perhaps places like Singapore that capitalism is really thriving as of current. And I have said it before, and I say it again, that the version of capitalism we are now operating, especially in Britain, America, Europe, Western Europe especially, is now what we call full-blown, in my language, but also what you call the market-based capitalism. So Musakayo notes a number of differences between today's state capitalism and its predecessor. In his opinion, gone are the days when governments appointed bureaucrats to run companies. The world's largest state-owned enterprises are now traded on the public markets and kept in good health by large institutional investors. Contemporary state capitalism is associated with the East Asian model of capitalism, the Gizme and the economy of Norway. Alternatively, Merriam-Webster defines the state capitalism as an economic system in which private capitalism is modified by a varying degree of government ownership and control. Like we said, something inimical to what is now happening in China as a capitalistic economic prospector. In socialism, utopian and scientific Friedrich Engels argued that the state-owned enterprises would characterize the final stage of capitalism, consisting of ownership and management of large-scale production and communication by the bourgeois state. These are actually some really cool terminologies. Bourgeois means capitalist as individuals, the ruling class also. In his writing, Vladimir Lenin characterized the economy of Soviet Russia as state capitalist, believing state capitalism to be an early step toward the development of socialism. So he wanted to use capitalism to overthrow capitalism. It's like treating cancer or maybe HIV or any bad virus. You use a dose of virus. COVID-19, I think the antivirus was used to create a dose of virus. COVID virus was used to create antivirus probably something. So some philosophers, some economic thinkers really thought to use the dose of capitalism to destroy capitalism. So we ended up with something resembling state capitalism. Some economists and left-wing academics, including Richard D. Wolff and Noam Chomsky, as well as the many Marxist philosophers and revolutionaries such as Raya Dunayevskaya and C.L.R. James, argue that economies of the former Soviet Union and Eastern European bloc and the Eastern Bloc represented a form of state capitalism because their internal organization within enterprises and the system of wage labor remain intact. Some of the arguments surrounding state capitalism. The term is not used by Austrian school economists to describe state ownership of the means of production. The economist Ludwig von Mises argued that the designation of state capitalism was a new label for the old label of state capitalism and planned economy, and differed only in non-essential from these earlier designations. The debate between proponents of private versus state capitalism is centered around the questions of managerial efficiency, productive efficiency, and fair distribution of wealth. I'm going to stop this video here. Next time we're going to continue and look at the welfare capitalism which we referred to previously. Thank you for watching this video. Please join me later, tomorrow perhaps, as we wait for the next video when I produce it. Thank you. Bye-bye.